what's up you guys? This is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Snapshot, we're going in deep when we revisit my solo guide to farming focus. Now, as many of us are aware, a few changes have been made to the spawning mechanics which no longer allow us to force spawns like I demonstrated in my previous video. And let's face it, that call was coming down the pipe. But as good players go, we don't cry over changes, we evolve along with them. Because let's face it, it's always going to be survival of the fittest, not survival of those who can complain the most. So this time around, I figured I'd just go a tad bit more in depth of how and why I do what I do. Okay, let's start with why I prefer the solo stealth farm to the traditional Draco farm. Now, there's a lot of people running around saying, I could get 75k in 4 rounds of Draco running X build on X frame. Fantastic, if that's what you like, just click out of the video and stick to that. I'm not here to argue with you. However, as someone who has posted up in Draco spamming abilities, let me just tell you. There is nothing worse than loading into a pub match with the intentions of farming focus and finding out you've been grouped with a Bladestorm Ash, a Radial Javelin Excalibur, and another overextended Equinox. Nevertheless, loading into a Corpus map and finding yourself surrounded by 3 other shield polarized mags. Frankly, as these copy and paste builds get more and more popular, the more competition there's going to be for kills, forcing you to have to do more runs than necessary. And as someone who has very little time to waste, I much prefer these solo runs, as you can call it quits the second you hit the 75k mark. Now, my setup for this is almost exactly the same as I showed off in my previous video. Warframe wise, I'm still using a variation of Loki's indefinite invisibility build, and as for my melee weapon of choice, the War is still sporting primed reach. However, I did add a Bane of Grineer to ensure one-hit kills. Both the Warframe and weapon are equipped with greater lenses, and yes, I'm running an affinity booster. I'm always running an affinity booster. Now, with a little urging from my stream, I went ahead and tried this out on the Albedo Deception mission on Ceres, and I do have to say that I quite like it. With this setup, I can hit 75k focus in about 10 to 15 minutes depending on how shit I am that day. Just keep in mind that a single Draco round averages about 5 minutes, putting a full run at about 20 minutes total. And since you're doing this solo, you can always pause things just in case you need to eat, piss, or jack off. Now, for those of you who haven't tuned into the original video, basically what you're going to do is run around and stealth kill everything in order to trigger the stealth kill affinity multiplier, which at its max will give you 500% bonus XP. Now, your Warframe and weapon will be gaining affinity, so it's definitely important to have lenses equipped on both. As for the run itself, you basically proceed with the mission as usual, until you get to the console room. Once you get here, you simply pitch a tent and camp. If enemies seem a bit thin, feel free to grab spawns from any of the adjoining rooms, and by the time you're done with them, the console room should have a fresh batch. So I do have a few tips for you all. Number 1, using this exact same build on the War, you should be able to one-hit kill everything. However, do be very conscious of shield lancers, as they will block any melee attacks coming in from the front, and will be made aware of your presence if they do. So make sure you've positioned yourself properly in order to take them down. Number 2, continuing the awareness trend, avoid using stealth finishers in clusters of enemies, as the animations do tend to cause you to bump into other units, causing them to become aware of your presence. So best practices would be not to position yourself directly behind an enemy's back. In addition, also ensure that you've placed yourself in such a way that your first cleave will take out the entire group. In my personal experience, on rare occasion, the second cleave of Tempo Royale can alert enemies. For as long as I've done this, I'm still not 100% sure why. I have my theories, but without concrete fact, there's no point in sharing. Now, if you have alerted an enemy, tip number 3 is to use Radial Disarm on them and leave them the fuck alone. Apparently, if you leave them be for a while, it resets their alertness, which, to be honest with you, is quite nice if they're a high affinity target, such as a commander or a heavy gunner. So Radial Disarm and just clear the rest of the room, then come back to them on the next rotation. Just note that this build does have a limited range, so get close enough to afflict them, but not close enough to bump into them again. Now, my 4th and final tip is to not constantly be checking your progress. Now, for those of you who don't know, you can hit P to check your progress mid-mission to see exactly how much focus you've accrued. If you're playing solo, this will also pause the game for you. Now, remember, a watched pot never boils, so just keep slaughtering till you hit the 10-minute mark. Check on your progress, then keep killing till you burn through your focus. Once you're done, toss that data mass in the mainframe and get your ass to extraction. So that pretty much wraps up my process for farming focus. Now, I know I'm going to get the following question. Can you do this with X Warframe or X weapon? And the honest to goodness answer is, I don't 100% know. I've been using this exact process to farm and have been fine tuning it to suit me. So I haven't gotten a chance to try out different variations with different Warframes or weapons, mainly because my way works. Now, you could give this a shot with the duration Ash, just be careful because I do believe that enemies caught within smoke bomb's radius do become alerted, and even with the limited range, it could break your stealth streak. Ivara on the other hand could also work, it just might take you a bit more time to get where you need to go. Now, if you wanted to test melee weapons, I'd suggest something with a good amount of range, and enough base damage to score one-hit kills, because anything more than that of course will alert enemies and break your multiplier. And on the topic of ranged weapons, I've heard reports of silenced weapons, whether it be with Hush or Loki's hushed invisibility, still alerting clustered enemies, so I tend to not bother exploring that path. Just think of this as masturbation. I've given you the basic technique, feel free to play around with it as much as you like. I, on the other hand, know what finishes me off in about 10 to 15 minutes, and I am more than satisfied with that. So thank you all for watching a very long snapshot. Hopefully this gave you another option besides Draco to farm in. If you haven't already caught it, be sure to check out my top 5 favorite Warframes of 2015 and my top 5 favorite primaries of 2015. Now don't forget to do all the things that I ask you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay tuned for more ways to improve your grind here at A Gay Guy Plays. And let's be 100% real here. Sometimes the shit pangs hit you like a fucking Mack truck, and there is no way your booty is gonna wait for you to finish that round.